Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host Bill Stierle. And Bill, today we are going to talk about communication traps, and we set this up at the end of our last episode, and I think it's a great subject to talk about because one of the things that I was so frustrated by in our last discussion is the media, the press corps especially at the White House, don't seem to have a lot of skills to have a much more productive and meaningful discourse with the press secretary or the president when he's at the podium. And you made the point, hey, there are a lot of communication traps that the media fall into or walk into, and maybe they even set up for themselves sometimes. So let's talk about some of those and what can be done to get around them.
Yeah, Tom, this topic about communication traps is has a whole set of challenges to it because we're taught to speak and think a certain way. Our school system, our instructional system says, here's the most efficient way to think and speak, and what winds up happening is that the reliance on facts or information and the push to get that clear. When you have somebody that is in marketing and sales, they're not interested in talking about the facts and the thing. They're interested in talking about their product or service being the best and how this is more valuable than the fact over here. That they even know more about the facts than the facts do. And you see, that's a trappy way to think, because no matter where the fact searcher goes, this person says, no, I'm in charge of the facts. I'm in charge of the truth. I'm in charge of decision making. I'm in charge of leadership. And don't worry about it, I have the best people around me. I have the best people that know the facts better than you do. And whereas you could have a very, very loaded, person, loaded information-wise, press person that knows the subject matter way better than the president does. He asks a question and the president just shifts. They call it moving the goalpost. They call, gaslighting, all those things. And all it's doing is just reclaiming authority, truth, and loyalty. Reclaiming those three: authority, truth, loyalty, respect, as a gerbil wheel. So the first trap to really kind of go into is when a media person is asking a question to pursue a fact, to pursue truth by the fact, the person that's listening, that's marketing and media, doesn't want to talk about it, we'll just move it over here. And, basically now all of a sudden dog chasing a car, it's like, what's the dog going to do when he catches it? Like, just slam into the back of it? And no, the dog's got to stop and bark more. And that's what they tend to do, is they tend to lead them around in that kind of fashion. Does it make sense then that facts have not worked very well?
Well, it does make sense to me, Bill, that facts haven't worked very well. I mean, because what all that the press secretary or the president's going to do when a journalist presents them with a fact, what does, Mr. President, what do you think of the total number of coronavirus deaths that are reported today to be over 110,000 in the United States?
We've been doing a great job. We've been doing the best job ever. Look at how many people we test. We are the number one in the world about how many people we have tested in our nation. We're number one. See,
So,
it's not answering the question.
no, he goes somewhere else. And if you, I guess the thing that's really, I think that what's occurring to me right now, Bill, and I'm interested what you think of this, is that when the media asks a direct question of the president or the press secretary, instantly the president or the press secretary or anybody in the administration knows what the journalist is going for, what they're looking for.
Right.
And they're not going to they're not just going to open the door and let you walk right in to that truth, right? To that fact or whatever. You've now shown them what you want, and they're going to misdirect you. So it seems very interesting, Bill. So the way to get around that and to get to truth, it's kind of ironic, is not to ask the direct question based on the fact, right? You've got to go another way. So how would, now if you were, the question I just asked about the coronavirus deaths, how would you ask the president a different question to try to avoid that trap?
Yeah, they've got to learn how to do a thing called a proactive empathy sentence before their question of fact. They don't know, none of them know how to do it. It's really very difficult. So, so it might start like this. When the president says that he is the law and order president, I'm guessing he's trying to instill the feeling of confidence so that he is a person that's going to make sure the nation returns to stability. Is that correct?
Well, yes, they have to say that, right?
They got to say yes. Now watch the next sentence. Does stability look like bringing the military in to use against
Protesters?
I probably wouldn't use against the protesters. Is that what stability looks like? Yes, the police are not getting the job done. See, the police are not getting the job done. The mayors are not getting the job done. They've got to disclose what the belief is then that they're doing. What is the belief? So maybe you're believing that law enforcement by itself can't handle that. Is that what your belief is? That's why you need this extra group of people?
So
No,
then all of a
yes,
sudden
no,
he's
yes.
against the cops and not for the cops, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's what it really demonstrates. I mean, are you saying that, well, the cops are run by the governors and the governors are soft. So you would like the governors to be more, take more action and have the police suppress the protesters? Is that what you're looking to do? See, when you use the phrase that the president says, I'm your law and order president, and then empathize with that sentence, could the president be feeling confident and he wants to be seen as somebody that is going to bring stability back to the nation? Yes.
Yes.
So the stability is through force and force and suppression. Is that what your thinking is? Yes, we're going to arrest those protesters. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You're going to arrest a protester? Well, that doesn't sound
one?
that doesn't sound proportional.
Right.
you arrest criminals, you don't arrest protesters. If the protester is breaking a window, you can arrest the protester. But you can't arrest the protester if he does for just yelling at you. So are we going to start arresting people for using words and phrases that we don't like? See, it's right up against the First Amendment, but the focus is on the cop being wrong, but the cop's being put in an unwinnable situation with violent training on crowd control.
Right. I mean, the whole current protest situation going on for 2 weeks in this country by the time we're recording this is, George Floyd is killed by a police officer kneeling on his neck, a clearly excessive use of force. The guy's been charged with murder. And people are protesting the excessive use of force. And here the president is saying, I'm your law and order president. If these states, governors can't get it under control, I'm going to send in the U.S. military to do what? Bring more force on these people that are protesting against excessive use of force.
Yeah,
I mean,
you have to get these people to work with you, right? Don't you want these people to go back to an economy, or are you just going to scare them into their rooms? Is that what you're going to do? Is that what do you want to scare them into their house more than they're into their house already?
Yeah. See,
is that what you're? Gosh, do you think that there might be? I'm guessing. And the reporter never asks the "I'm guessing" question, because reporters aren't trained to speculate. They aren't trained to empathize. They're trained to pursue facts and information so they can write their story.
But the interesting thing that I've certainly learned, and I hope a lot of our listeners have learned, is, the pursuit of truth, according to Bill Stierle, is you get more truth by empathizing and showing compassion for who you're asking than you do asking the direct question. I mean, it seems to me asking the direct question is really only more likely to work when someone's under oath in a court of law, with the weight of perjury over them. And even still, a lot of people don't tell the truth then.
That's right. They know that there's a danger there. And even when I've helped attorneys communicate with their closing arguments or opening arguments, how much empathy do you need to put inside the room in order for the jury to start extending trust to you? Well, you got to treat everybody in the room like they're a human being first. Not that there is a bad guy and a good guy in this room. There's an unfortunate circumstance. There's a person that missed a step maybe, and it caused the other person harm. That might be there, and that's why they're in court, is to get the law to help them with that. That's why they're in court. Can the judge and the law help them, to get the justice that they're looking for? So, even in, high conflict negotiations and mediations, you've got to go to empathy and compassion to get there to be a resolve quicker, because you got to find out what their need is. If you don't find out what their need is, then you're basically fighting through the illusion of language and distraction. Because you'll notice, Tom, that the thing they give back, and that leads us to the second trap, which is, the swirl of explanation. It's like, do I need to hear an explanation that is partially truth? And the best person, the person that is the wiggliest on this, is Bill Barr. He is like, he explains things that are marginally true to just get one little sliver, and in the middle of this marginally true stuff of his statements, there's a blatant, that's really not true. And I think you just put a pillow around a pile of crap. You know, you bubble wrap a piece of crap, and then we have to step on it. It's like there's crap in the middle of that because it's not true. I mean, he did it with the Mueller report, and what happened is that he had literally a 2-week lead before the report came out of distractive spin, and where truth was purchased. I mean, now, you know, this is not a partisan show, although the two of us have some opinions about the world. This is a communication show.
Right.
And I gotta remind the listeners of that. This is a communication show. It's how communication is used to purchase truth away from us. That's what it's kind of about. So explanation. Well, Tom, did your parents ever explain to you the good reason why you couldn't have something when you were growing up?
Of course.
It was numbing. Distracting.
It was numbing, and
helpless. And
yeah.
God.
I didn't want to hear the explanation. It wasn't helpful.
No, it wasn't helpful. They needed empathy about why you couldn't. You needed empathy about why you couldn't have the ice cream, not the 15 or 20-minute dissertation about health, about eating dessert after the meal, rather than, you know, before the meal, as if that was true. You know, so, you know, it's, and that gets us to the third. You know, one of the third things is one of the next ones is awareness of the bribe. The bribe is coming. I'm going to tell you about this later. That's a typical marketing sales technique called, I'm going to set up an uncertainty, and I'm going to bribe you to wait till after the commercial break. Every radio show host, every TV show that's at news art, you know, Rachel Maddow does the hook. All the writers write the hook in. They've got to get the listener to come back in after the commercials.
Right.
The commercial's paying the bill. Listener's not paying the bill. Commercial person is. The person that's in charge of the eyeball is the network. So we got to keep the listener. And that just Trump is, all of the different products and services he has started and failed in has prepared him to be the president, to sell to people consistently a sizzle. All he does is sell sizzle. And that's the hardest part, that we used to be a nation where you could eat your steak. Now you can only smell your steak and hear it cooking in the other room. We used to have the steak of respect, but now we don't. We used to have the steak of being the leader in the world to help other countries out. Not now, we don't. We used to have the steak of using military for good. Now we don't. We used to have the stake of calling other countries on human rights issues. Now we don't.
Yeah,
we do not have that stake anymore.
Yeah, as a country, we look like we lack serious credibility on that because of how we're treating our own people here.
Yeah, I mean, and now, in order to get the stake to come back, the jails have to be cut in half. I mean, the population has to be in half. Any African American that is in for a drug charge has got to come out. Has got to come out. And if there's some violence with it, then they stay in. But if there's a drug associated with it, no. The history and the truth is clear that drugs were used to put Black people in jail and people and marginalize, you know, the people that are advocates. I mean, it's really, really tough. I mean, we're really in a tough space because there's no systems in place to let half the prisoners out, because half the prisoners out, there's no economy for them to come back to. There's no job waiting for them. There's no preparation for them to leave jail. There's none of that. There's nothing there. I mean, we are paying $30,000 a year to keep them in, more than a college education. What are we doing? What are we doing? Now, if the person's violent, they stay in. If the person can't move to a place of some kind of certainty that they won't harm somebody else, there's ways to get there with all kinds of programs on restorative justice. And there's a lot of things that, can sand off the edge of violence inside a person's head. And then there's a lot of folks that need to stay in there for longer because they're not safe. But the guards even know who's safe and who's not, who's healthy and who's not, who needs. And then let's go fix our society from the inside out. So I don't know, I'm ranting a bit, Tom, but this bribery piece,
right,
is really, really important to get a hold of, because that's how the press gets trapped, and this it's a trap, because we're going to wait. There's going to be a promise. And even Joe Biden's got some problems with this one. He's making a promise. He doesn't need to make a promise. He needs to stand for a value. He doesn't have to promise anything. Trump didn't promise it. Trump promised things like he's a short order chef, cooking some cheap hamburgers. I mean, did you see all the opinion in that statement? I most certainly. You're
going to get some flack for that one.
I took out my bias for a piece, but he sizzles it, man. He's a good cook. He's a good cook. I mean, I'll be the first one as a communication specialist to give him acknowledgement of how well he does the 3 steps. He puts a reward, he gives anticipation, and then he creates uncertainty. He does not deliver on any of those things.
Yeah,
he doesn't deliver on the word. He doesn't deliver on the things. He doesn't deliver anything.
No, his very frequent statement is, "We'll see what happens." That's the uncertainty that he's throwing in all the time.
He always goes. He's always throwing the uncertainty sense.
Well, when is that going to happen, Mr. President? Well, we'll see what happens.
We'll have to see what happens. We're not really sure. Depends if the Democrats are going to help me vote for this. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's an idea that costs too much money, is ineffective, and isn't valuable to us as a nation. No, we're not going to vote for you. There's no uncertainty at all. It's like,
Bill, it occurs to me there's something that you and I were discussing recently, and I was watching, I think a week ago or so, a video from back, I think in like January or December of last year, which really helps show how empathy helps bring the truth out.
Yeah.
And that questioning differently. The funny part is it shows it's people like Jon Stewart when he was hosting The Daily Show that use this technique more often and bring it out. And sometimes some of the other people they're still doing. This is a comedy show. It's meant to be funny. It's not meant to be a hard news organization, but in some ways they would get the truth out more than the journalists and the press corps. And so an example is, you remember there was Jordan Klepper, who's one of the Daily Show's correspondents here, in air quotes if you're watching the video, because it's a comedy show, but he was at a Trump rally and he's asking people how they feel about Trump, why they're a Trump supporter. I mean, some real basic questions, and then all of the sizzle talking points would come out, right? Would come out about Trump, and what was clear in the way that Jordan Klepper would ask the questions of them is that they really didn't know. They didn't know any facts about these things that they were saying. Right. They did not do any research on their own to read or to know anything. Like that, one of the things was they're saying when they were asked about impeachment, some people would say, "Oh, well, this impeachment thing, it's a hoax. It was a perfect call. Read the
Right.
transcript. And he would say, well, so have you read the transcript? And that's a direct question, just to
It
call
is.
myself out. That's a direct question. This is not an empathetic question right now. But people would say, well, no, I haven't read it, but I've heard people talk about who have read it, and it was perfect. Like, okay, well, but just to be clear, you haven't read it. No, I haven't read it. Right. And so the people were just spewing these talking points without digging deeper. And one of them, this
Right.
is an interesting one that gets at sort of empathy and how Jordan Klepper would question people, is he said to one person who was saying the impeachment thing was a hoax, he says, well, so, should John Bolton testify in the impeachment
Oh yeah.
trial?
Yeah, that's a good
And
catch.
they
Yeah.
would say, well, no, he shouldn't testify because, well, he's not going to tell the truth anyway because Trump fired him and he's disgruntled and he'll never tell the truth. So Jordan Klepper would say, oh, so if there was a system, a way, maybe we could put John Bolton under oath to make sure that he would tell the truth. Like, oh yeah, under oath. The person said, yeah, that's a good idea. And maybe if there was a judge who was watching over this whole thing, maybe the
Right.
highest judge in the land, then he go, yeah, sure, that's good. And then the person realized, oh, you mean like the impeachment trial where people are under oath and there's a judge. It's like, no, that wouldn't really work. So I mean, he would go with them, with their beliefs, and
He would go with their beliefs.
go
That's
with their
right.
beliefs and give them empathy for their position. Oh, okay, so you believe this, you think it
Right.
should be done this way, and he
Yes.
would emphasize with them and get them eventually to walk out on a plank, like we say sometimes, where they realize their argument is invalid because
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it's
truth
thin
is
and
not on
wobbly.
their side. Right, they're
Yeah,
just
it's thin
spewing the
and
talking
wobbly.
point. So I'm going to make sure, just for interest of our listeners, and this is not, I know people view the Daily Show as like a left-wing show. That's really not the
Yeah.
point, but I'm going to have
No, it's not. It's a communication piece. It's
it is
you're
communication.
bringing the point of how biases affect us. Tom, you and I are sitting with a dozen to 24 biases in our head that don't serve us and aren't true. They are. I mean, we do.
I
Everybody's
believe
got
you. I believe
dozen to 24 biases, easy, about anything from spending money to what's the best cereal to what's the best car to get. I mean, we sit with biases. We just do. And
Yes.
and these, we've been influenced. This show is about how that influence gets, codified and entrenched, and what can we do to get out of it. That's what we're talking about. So this, the Klepper example is a great example to provide the person a place to speak what they have rattling around in their brain, and let that out of a person's head so they can explore it with another person. It's like, talk it through. Is this bias true? Or are you going to stay with it? It's one of the things I got on my Facebook posts recently. One of my colleagues, clients said, Bill, you've approached this post with a great deal of equanimity and graciousness, more than I could ever do. And then he put, comma, isn't it time for you to cull your Facebook list, because people were giving me pushback? And so, I know he was like making the recommendations, like, don't you just want to get rid of some of these people that are in the opposition place, or the person that, took it? And the answer is no. They're sitting with a bias that they're just getting the opportunity to vent. And I'm just giving them an opportunity to write it out there so they can explore it, and other people can provide the perspective that might be helpful to them. It's the perspective of what this thing is. because Tom, you and I have talked about many times, all there has got to be is one word out of place, and the person's bias will get activated and they turn into a fire-breathing dragon. I disagree with this vehemently. Disagree with what vehemently? The one word,
Yeah, it's a
the
lot of
one
times.
phrase.
It's a lot of times it's a
That's
label or a
it.
diagnosis that'll set someone off, right? It's a
Absolutely.
lot, and
Absolutely.
it's what Trump is so good at in branding. He'll label and diagnose
He'll
anybody.
label and diagnose it, and then it gets people on fire. And then what happens is that
Well,
it gives him the opportunity to hijack truth, because I'm on your side, because you can fire people and I've never been able to fire people in their lives. He tapped into the feeling of helplessness. That's what he's been hijacking, is the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, and then just pointed the finger and said, "You've been helpless and hopeless? Well, seems like voting for a Democrat never got you off your helpless and hopeless. So I think you should vote for me." And that swang, that simple belief bias hijacked an entire group, because even people that vote for Barack Obama last time, they got hijacked over to Trump, because what was the famous poster that Barack Obama had? It had underneath it one word: hope.
hope.
Well, we voted for this guy. We wanted hope, and we didn't see any movement. Well, I mean, Barack
Depends on who
Obama
you
was
are,
in.
maybe, but
Well, yeah, Barack Obama, was in the middle of two wars
well,
and a struggling economy,
digging it
but
out of the ditch. That
digging it out of the
was
ditch, it's like, very, very challenging. So,
well, and actually that reminds me of one of the most effective sizzle lines from Sarah Palin in the election in 2012, because she wasn't running, but she was put on stage a lot talking about, hey, how's that hopey changey thing working for you? And that's how she sort of hijacked that idea of hope,
right,
right? And
right.
how a lot of people had not, realized the promise of that hope, right?
Well, see, the also the part of it too is that Americans have not gotten used to running the marathon. We've been coached into running a sprint. One of the things that COVID has really kind of forced us all into as a nation, as a species, is to run the marathon. You have to run a marathon with this, and a lot of people are trying to paint a sprint narrative on this. Like, we got to get and Trump is trying to do it too. So we got to open, we got to open, we got to reopen. It all go away if there's a good economy. Look, the stock market went up, didn't it? Didn't it? Am I a good boy yet? It's like, aren't you getting your money back? Look, the stock market's coming back. It's like, well, you're just, it's not, there's not, there's no award, award, that you get for going back up a couple points, because a marathon is, you got to get one foot after each other, and he's not particularly good at that. So, yeah.
Well, now, I mean, the economy for 3+ years under the Trump administration had continued to go up, as it was in the Obama administration. It had continued to go up, and the president was taking credit for that, victory laps all the time, saying, hey,
Right.
it's all because of me. It's going really well. And then now, this year, the economy taking a very, very sharp dive. Of course, the president doesn't take any responsibility. He's blaming everybody else.
Right.
Couldn't pause.
Right.
So, it's very convenient that it's all because of me when it's good, and when it's bad, no, it's not because of me.
Yeah. The Again, that's the reward, the anticipation, and the uncertainty. And I could complain about something, and the reward then becomes, loyalty. I'm getting loyalty because you're also not blaming me. I'm not going to blame me, so you don't blame me. You're going to look to assign other people to be responsible for something, even though I'm the leader. I mean, you know, the buck does not stop at the resolute desk. This doesn't in this administration, because it only things that look like this is the thing that this is the intention that I'm going to set, and this is the executive order I'm going to put in, right? So we've got to be aware of the bribe. We've got to be careful not to ask a follow-up question to get clarity, but ask a follow-up question to deepen the conversation, provide Americans reflection, and of the good reason why we're doing something.
They never do that, do they? The press corps,
Nope.
they always ask the follow-up question, and or maybe it isn't even, well, it's usually a follow-up question. They ask a question, they get some explanation, they find some detail that they don't think is in alignment with truth, and they follow up and say, so the president thinks this, right?
Yes. Can't
And
do it.
and it just it creates that antagonism between the person at the podium and the journalist, and it doesn't get anything except maybe a reaction.
Right. That's right. The reaction. And then they're doing a little bit better of, acting as if they're one of the American citizens, instead of supporting the American citizens. And as soon as they humanize it and bring it to themselves, it'll actually go better for the reporters. It's like, well, I'm one of the American citizens, and this is how I'm affected by what you just said. Now the person on there is not answering a question. It exposes their inability to empathize and their inability to really be concerned or bring concern to the American public. So,
do you remember when that Chinese American reporter in the Rose Garden and the press corps, within the last month, asked the president, hey, Mr. President, because he made this really nasty comment about China, right?
right.
And about the Chinese people, and she's a Chinese American, and he said to her, why don't you go ask China? Why don't you go ask China? And she says to him, Mr. President, is the reason you asked me that or said that statement to me, and implying I'm a Chinese American, did you tell me to go ask China because I'm Chinese, is really what she was saying. Now imagine if she had done what you just did, Bill, what you just said,
Right.
saying, Mr.
Yeah.
President, I'm a Chinese American, and that kind of statement is very hurtful to me because I'm an American citizen. And if she had framed it differently,
Right.
she would have gotten a very different response from the president that probably would have been much more productive, and also really at the same time gotten him to reveal his own bias.
Yeah. He visually, got stuck into one of his own biases, and he was projecting and going back to a talking point of assigning blame to China for this, for whatever the question was, and all of a sudden he's asking, a person of, Asian appearance. So the best guess I can make of it, about that. And, her best phrase might have been like, well, I don't know about best, but here's a couple of choices. She could have said, Mr. President, I feel uncomfortable. Now, he doesn't do good with somebody feeling uncomfortable. He's not the consoler or chief.
He doesn't know what to do with it, does he?
No. See, I feel uncomfortable because as an Asian person, I have no relationship with China. Are you asking me as a reporter to go to report on China because I'm Asian, or is that just a talking point that you just mentioned?
Wow.
Now, he, he is not known for deep comments. He could turn around and walk off stage. He's done that before.
That might be his best play because he doesn't
He
have
doesn't have
any other tools in his
and he has
toolbox,
no
right?
tools.
Yeah.
He can't empathize with himself. So there's no way he's going to be able to empathize with her. If he had any skill, or if I was the person up there being the president and somebody said that to me, I would go like, you know what, I do feel uncomfortable too. I guess I would like greater accountability with China, and I'm not sure how to bring attention to that. Now, I just ended in an uncertainty sentence, but he didn't have that skill.
No.
He doesn't have the skill. I don't know how to get them to have accountability either. Maybe the press can get China to have accountability. It's like, you mean I mean, it's a little convoluted in the communication world right now because all we're taking place is people taking, pot shots at each other with little, anything, at a press conference with squirt guns, but on the streets we're actually having rubber bullets, which is really upsetting too. So there's a lot of problems going on here to deal with these three major issues. Among many of the major issues that we're currently facing as we go into restoring America, to reclaim some of the steak that we've just been, sizzling, and we're not getting back to. We've got to get back to produce the steak that we used to, supporting others, being a world leader, standing for integrity, really dealing with and cleaning up our human rights stuff. It's very, very, very uncomfortable right now. So we do have some, major economic and social problems and health problems to deal with, and that's a big part of the what is needed for media to do is not get caught in the traps that they're in. I think the last trap I want to talk about, Tom, is the leaning on the rule of law as absolute trap.
Okay.
This particular trap is really very, very difficult trap, because what it does is that when somebody says, I am your law and order president, and then orders heavily armed soldiers to DC to threaten and deploy military nationwide, and then he's going to use tear gas and rubber bullets, on protesters, or he's giving the permission to. The person that the officer is caught in the double bind that many officers are in, which is, and we could do a whole show on how truth has been purchased regarding policing, and now all of a sudden we have our next show, right?
Oh my
how
gosh. Yeah.
how police are expected to do too much. Their police do not belong doing social issues. They just don't. And we'll get into that, but it's law and order. It's like, we can't just give it to the cops. Dog walking or dog chasing, call the cops. It's like, you gotta have you have to have social systems in place to deal with various different social items that are, we don't want dogs to breed out of control in the outside environment. There's some countries that dogs do, they're out of control and they can't get rid of them. It's real hard. Anyway, Okay. So coming back to this leaning on the rule of law as an absolute. In communication, there are 4 accepted communication strategies: problem solving, explanation, which we talked about, bribery, or rewards, steals, and punishments, we talked about. And the 4th one that's acceptable is rules, duties, and obligations. That's the 4th one.
Okay.
Okay. So, with all that in mind, when the president leans on the rule of law and says, I'm the law and order president, and then in the middle of this speech that he gives, he says, there's only one law. And I mean, somebody made a joke about it and said, is he quoting RoboCop? What is he doing out there? You know, it's like, what? There's only one law. Well, if I'm someone, a voter that values the need for order because I'm a person that follows the rules, I'm in complete 100% agreement with him because I don't like messiness. I don't like the world I don't like it when my kitchen's not clean. I don't like it when my yard's not done. I don't like it when. So there's a very solid group of Americans, somewhere between 25 to 33% of Americans, have the value of law and order as a form, and it's attached to fairness. They get to speak up, but I don't get to speak up. They get to be messy. I don't get to be messy. But see, the problem is that there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. The letter of the law looks one thing, and then the spirit of law is, what is this intention going for? This is what the intention is. When somebody leans on the rule of law as absolute and then takes a walk and holds up a Bible, they're literally tapping into something very, very old communication-wise. This is the rules that we follow. This is the Judeo-Christian rules. Or actually, in Trump's case, these are the Old Testament rules, and I'm an Old Testament God. Now, I was hoping to get you to smile there, but it's very funny. It's like, but it's uncomfortable too, because when somebody quotes a rule, it's like, here's what these 10 commandments are, and you better follow them.
Yeah, I guess I didn't laugh because I find the president holding up a Bible very disingenuous. I didn't think it was very funny, quite honestly. Because I don't think he's read it. And not only that you talk about the 10 commandments. How many do we know that this president has broken? Stormy Daniels and such.
Oof.
So
it's really a stretch.
I have a trouble with the president's integrity. I think, quite honestly, well, this is my opinion, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, you're expecting the president to do something that is really very difficult. You're expecting the president not to be human. So the back door or the skeleton key on this is, well, he isn't that Old Testament God, but he's acting like the Old Testament God. He is the person that can make up the rules, but he doesn't have to be someone that lives by the rules.
Right.
Right. So because he gets the free pass, because
I agree. You mentioned the rule of law, and one of the things that comes to mind recently is how the president votes by mail. His press secretary votes by mail, and he's waging this assault on voting by mail because it's supposedly fraught with fraud. And, he's benefiting from a law that allows him to vote by mail, but he doesn't want other American citizens to vote by mail. I think largely because he doesn't want to make it easy for people to vote against him by mail.
Yeah, it's that could be a truth. That could be a truth is that
It
that
could
he
be.
is, but he his truth is that um that and he's created an imagination and a story, and he's been selling the story of that that these things can be printed and that there's no one checking them. And meanwhile is that there is people checking them, and there there are ways and systems in place to make sure that that this one vote or this thing is not it's not this widespread thing that is being orchestrated by someone or something, that there's systems in place to check that. It's one of the things that is important is not to create doubt and skepticism about something that we have, or my belief structure says that I have a general sense of certainty around. What level of certainty? Well, I would say in my mind, it's somewhere between 97 to 99% certainty that that a vote by mail, that I'm trusting that Americans have that level of integrity, and that the Americans that are counting the votes have a level of integrity to match it up, and that we have enough detailed, ordered people out there to, keep, a ballot box from being stuffed. That's
Yeah.
at least a little bit my things. And it doesn't mean that it may not happen, because I'm staring at it, with a sober eye too. It's like, I could stare at it and say, well, how can smart people do a better job of this? And then, trusting that there's the level of integrity and level of trust is high enough.
So how would you keep, let's go with this one for a sec, maybe as one of our last examples, because it's good for the rule of law, where the press corps said to the press secretary recently, so the president voted by mail, but he doesn't want the rest of the citizens to vote by mail, and they're pursuing truth here, just the direct facts. They're saying,
All right.
didn't the president vote by mail? Well, yes, but the president has to vote by mail because he's in DC and he can't go to Florida to vote. That's what they do.
Yeah, and they're starting their question in the wrong place. See, I would start the question with, going after the emotion. So it would start. So I'm guessing, or could the president be feeling doubtful that that the ballots are being counted accurately, and he needs some more trust in the ballots being counted accurately? Yes, that's the subtext.
That's a straightforward question they would answer yes to. I agree.
They would say yes. So it seems like that the president doesn't have trust. Does he have trust in his ballot getting counted correctly?
There's a good question, Bill. They'd have to say yes, wouldn't they?
Yes. So how can we have the same level of trust that the president gets for the rest of the Americans? Because he is just one American, even though he holds the highest job in the land. How can we have the same level of trust that everybody's vote gets counted?
I don't think she would know how to answer that question.
No, because there's no policy in place to do anything about it, because it's a red herring. It's not about it. It's creating the doubt, so it creates loyalty to the leader. It's not about fixing the system. Don't we all still believe in America that one person, one vote, right? Yes. Okay. So how can we have trust again? If the president doesn't have trust, what's his plan to get trust, to protect Americans' votes? I don't know. I have to get back to you. I mean, there's no way to go, but empathy, calling doubt out. See, doubt and skepticism is being used as a weapon right now. It's a weapon.
Right.
Activating the feeling of doubt and skepticism. This is why the conspiracy shows have a great deal of popularity to it, because I don't know about the crop circles. What is that dark thing underneath the cornfield there? Oh, it's an old military landing base? Wow, I watched a half an hour show to discover it wasn't the alien that you baited me with at the beginning of the show, but it's an old military base. Oh, I feel good because I know something now. It wasn't an alien, but you were putting the bait on the hook to get me to watch the show about an alien. An alien? Was this an alien, man? Landing ship? Some alien experts think so. I mean, it's like they already know at the start of the show that it's an old World War II landing strip used by the English against the Nazis, and they tell this whole other story. It's like, oh my gosh. So we're doing this to each other all the time. It's just the president is really good at it. He's really good at it. He's really good at saying it, and he just uses these different tactics to purchase truth away from others. And he's good at it. And this is a communication show, and it's about watching these things. And if you want your message to be sold, if you would like people to follow you, then the tools and techniques that we teach here will get you to get people to follow you better. That's the best thing,
Yeah.
We can use it for good stuff.
Oh, my goodness. It's scary.
So it is scary time. So the next time I think we go into this, purchasing truth and the reality regarding police.
Yes.
Because I think the police discussion is really timely, as well as they need some empathy and some consideration about what has happened to them and to the ranks and the different things they've been required to do, and the different levels, the different mindsets that they've been cultivated in that hasn't really been particularly very good. So we got to do a little bit of work there, because it hasn't went well for them.
I agree, Bill. I think it's a great subject for next time. I made note of that. We will do that. Truth in policing, and I think it's a really good discussion to have, because I think in general, well, maybe I should be careful what I say there, but I mean, I think police, are not a partisan issue so much. It's not Republicans like police and Democrats don't like them. I don't think that's true. I think that police and policing, while there are lots of issues and problems to discuss, it's not divided along clear political lines. So I think that's a good way to talk about purchasing of truth, language, and communication in a really healthy way to discuss about it. And I think there's a need for it, as you said, right now, and what's going on in our country. So
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Bill. Well, thanks so much.
All right, Tom, thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and more to come.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.